Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is April 16th. Mid-April has a way of pulling us outward. The lists grow longer, the light stretches later. Everything feels as though it's asking for attention at once. And yet the garden has its own pace. It doesn't care about the list. There's always one thing that stops you: a stem you didn't expect, a color that wasn't there yesterday, a seed caught growing somewhere it had no business being. The garden keeps interrupting, and somehow those interruptions become the to-dos on an ever-growing list. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day, in 1886, that the English botanist and ecologist Edward Salisbury was born in Harpenden, England. As a boy, Edward wandered the fields near his home, digging up wild plants and carrying them back to a small garden patch. He never really stopped doing that. Years later, after a walk through the countryside, Edward came home and discovered that the cuffs of his wool trousers were thick with seeds. Instead of brushing them away, he planted them. More than 300 plants came up, over 20 different species. Gardeners and walkers, Edward realized, carried the living world with them without ever meaning to. During the Second World War, Edward served as director of the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew in London. Bombs fell nearby, glass shattered, and beds were torn open. And Edward watched what happened next. Plants returned first to the broken places. Disturbed ground became an invitation. Ruins became laboratories for understanding how life disperses and how it protects. Edward spent decades working with seeds, hundreds of thousands of them, patiently weighing and counting. He liked to say that a weed is simply a plant growing where we don't want it. Edward died in 1978 at the age of 91, still writing about the wild plants of Britain. His book, Weeds and Aliens, remains a foundational text in British ecology. And the seeds Edward studied are still being counted. And it was on this day, in 1847, that the American botanical illustrator Ellen Thayer Fisher was born in Boston. Ellen painted the ordinary plants of her world with extraordinary care. She worked at home, around meals, and around 7 children. She planted poppies and blackberries, milkweed and sumac, thistles alive with bees, and mushrooms carried in fresh from a walk, so that she could capture their color before it slipped away. Her brother, the American painter Abbott Thayer, known for his work on animal camouflage, sometimes added a final touch to Ellen's pieces. Together, they signed some works simply Nellie. Through her work with Boston publisher Louis Prang, an early pioneer of the American greeting card, Ellen's flowers traveled far beyond her table, into parlors, classrooms, and into the hands of people who might never kneel in a garden themselves. What had once been considered acceptable subjects for a woman to paint, flowers, leaves, and fruit, over time became her strength. Ellen turned domestic subjects into independence and everyday plants into lasting records. She died in Boston in 1911. Today, her illustrations survive in museum collections and botanical archives, still precise, still alive with color, and exactly as she left them. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear an excerpt from the French poet, journalist, and novelist Anatole France, born on this day in 1844. In his book, The Garden of Epicurus, Anatole imagined the garden not only as a place for plants, but also as a place for thought, somewhere curiosity could stretch without being hurried. He wrote, "We are like little children who, in a vast theater, should see the play without understanding it. If we could see the world as it is, it would be as different from our ideas of it as a garden is from a map. We only see a tiny part of the immense design, a few threads of the tapestry, and we judge the weaver by the little we can see." Anatole wrote those words in 1894, and I think every gardener has had that sentiment without knowing the words. A map can tell you where the roses are, but it cannot tell you what they do to you in June. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Herbalist by Heather Morrison Tapley. This book is part of Herbs and Kitchen Gardens Week here on The Daily Gardener. This is a week devoted to book recommendations about gardens that feed us, heal us, and quietly shape the rhythm of our daily lives. This is a fiction book. It's just a fun read for your spring break. And the story begins with a woman named Eden who has just watched her carefully built life come apart in a single night. So she does what any sensible woman would do. She abandons everything and moves to a tiny village in England. There she meets the last in a centuries-long line of magical herbalists, a local healer who carries knowledge passed hand to hand for generations. What makes this book belong here in mid-April is its pace. Heather Morrison Tapley understands that herbs ask us to slow down, to trust in the healing that we can grow year after year, and to believe that small, steady care can change the shape of a life. This is a book for your kitchen counter, for reading while you're making some tea, or while something cooks that isn't quite ready yet. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1967 that the American botanist and plant collector Mary Gibson Henry died in North Carolina on a plant collecting expedition at the age of 82. Mary was a field botanist and explorer who carried a machete when she went looking for flowers. She traveled by horseback, by car, and on foot, pushing into swamps, briars, and ravines, because rare plants don't grow where it's easy. Mary walked bare-legged through rattlesnake country. She stepped over roots and snakes alike. She liked to say that danger only made the work more interesting. And even in her early 80s, Mary was known to hike 10 miles a day through dense woodland and rough terrain. On that final day, Mary was standing deep in wet ground, boots soaked, notebook close. She was looking for one more lily. Mary died where she wanted to be, in the field, in the arms of Mother Nature. Today, more than 600 species and varieties bear her name or were introduced through her work. The Henry Foundation for Botanical Research, which she established at her Pennsylvania home, continued her work after she was gone. As we close the show today, remember, some days aren't about getting everything done. They're about what stops you mid-step. A seed caught on your cuff, a plant you didn't plan for, or a path you've walked 100 times that still has something new in it. The garden doesn't ask us to hurry. It asks us to return again and again with our hands and our minds open. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, For a happy, healthy life, garden every day.